Hello, I'm Mark Price. I'd like to talk to you today about kids. There was a young girl went to her mother and said, "Mom, where do we come from?" And her mother said, "Well, God created us. He created Adam and Eve. They had children. Their children had children. Their children had children. And along the years, finally we came along. But God created us." And the little girl then went to her father and said, "Daddy, where do we come from? Where do people come from?" And the father sat her down and said, "Well, it all started with monkeys. You see, there were monkeys, and then they had more monkeys, and we evolved over the many, many years." Well, the little girl was scratching her head. She was confused, and she went back to her mother and said, "Mommy, I don't understand. You told me we came from God, and Daddy says we come from monkeys. Help me to understand." And the mother looked at her and said, "Oh, well, I was telling you about our side of the family. He was telling you about his side of the family." There you go. The logic, the wonderful nature of children. Kids today. The gospel is from Matthew chapter 11, verses 25 to 27. At that time, Jesus exclaimed, "I give praise to you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, for although you have hidden these things from the wise and the learned, you have revealed them to the childlike. Yes, Father, such has been your gracious will. All things have been handed over to me by my Father. No one knows the Son except the Father, and no one knows the Father except the Son, and anyone to whom the Son wishes to reveal him." The Gospel of the Lord. So that is a reading that we have heard in different ways, but very similar many, many times, even over the last 3 months. And it's a reading and thoughts that are many, many times told in the scriptures. And one of the things I've learned is when the Gospels tell a story over and over again, it's because it's important. It's important to Jesus, it's important to the gospel writers, and it's important to the future so that we can better understand the past, that we can better understand God. And this is something that's been told many times. And what's it saying to us? It's saying that God, the Father, knows the Son better than anyone, and the Son knows the Father better than anyone, and that God has, through the Son, revealed his teachings to little children, as opposed to adults who don't seem to get it, don't seem to understand. And I think what that's saying is, as we become adults, we become more and more closed-minded. We become more and more set in our ways. The old saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. And so what the reading is telling us today is that we have to be childlike. It uses that phrase, childlike, to truly understand God, to truly understand the teachings of Jesus. I think the older we get, we use our logic to further or promote our own ideologies rather than using our logic for the understanding of truth. And kids seem to want to know the truth, like in my opening story. Where do we come from? Dad had one explanation, Mom had another. But the child really wanted to know. So I shared with you 10 traits before that we as adults should retain from our child. To be childlike as adults, these traits. First, being curious. Children are curious. They always want to ask questions. I think that's in part why time is so slow when we're young and goes so fast when we're old, because when we're old, we're not as curious. We've already seen everything we think. But a child is always wanting to learn. They're curious, wanting to explore. One of the reasons kids sometimes get lost in grocery stores and we get frightened as parents is because they're off exploring, because it's all fresh and new to them. Having an imagination. The imagination of children is something that we as adults should get back to. Closing off our imagination and not allowing our imagination to flourish, not allowing our imagination to grow is one of the limitations, I think, that we take on as adults that we should get back to and hold on as when we were kids. Accepting others. Accepting others. This is a wonderful trait of a child. It's also a dangerous trait. That's why we parents warn them, be careful when a stranger comes up, because a child is so accepting. The older we get, we seem to put our walls up. We put our barriers up. And to be more childlike, we should be more trusting of each other. We should also, or accepting of each other. We should also have a sense of innocence. That sense of innocence is so gone as we become adults. That innocence, that idea that there is real truth. That idea that we are not tainted by the world, but we are these fresh, new, innocent beings made by God. I remember the story of this young boy, and he was about to have a new sister. And he said, "Mommy, Daddy, when my sister comes to live at home with us, may I speak with her, please? May I go see her?" And sure enough, the little sister was born and comes and is in the house. And the little boy says, "May I go and see her alone, please? May I see her alone, please?" And Mom and Dad said, "Yes, let him into the room." But they kind of watched through the door. And they saw the little brother go up to his new baby sister and say, "Can you tell me what God sounds like? I'm beginning to forget." We lose that sense of innocence in our lives, that sense of our connection to God. Giving generously, a child will share. Except I remember one time my daughter, she was blowing out her candles at her birthday party, and one of her girlfriends, leaned in and blew them out for her, and she just got furious. So they share, but there's limits sometimes. Being content. A child seems to be more content with what they have and enjoying what they have. They're not always looking for that greener pasture, the greener grass. The more we become adults, and we lose that sense of being content with what we have. That old saying of happiness is wanting what you have, not having what you want. Be content with what we have. Freely expressing love. A child will express love freely and completely, and it's wonderful. And as adults, we start to restrict ourselves. We limit our love. We limit our free expression of that love, real love. And getting up after a fall. You see children playing, they're knocked down, they fall over, they're pushed down, they trip, but they're always getting back up. Why? Because it's not about the fall, it's about what you're going to do when you get up. It's about always looking forward to being that person who's involved and active in what's going on around you. That's a child. And then in the 10th trait, and I'm rushing through these, other times I'll spend a lot more time on each one, but being believers. A child will believe. A child sees something in you as a parent. A child sees something in the world, and they believe what they hear. Like the girl in this opening story, she believed her mother that we came from God until her father said we came from apes. So she had to go and get her answer solved. One of the things that, as a parent, saddens me a little bit is, as my daughter grows up, and she's an adult now, I miss those days when she was a child, that innocence, that the nature of who she was. I remember I used to take her with me to performances and to talks all over the place, and I would get a special warmth and appreciation when at the end of my talks and everybody is going to leave, people come up to me and they want to talk to me and share with me. And my daughter would come and push through them and just take hold of my arm or take hold of me and just want to be close, saying, "Yeah, you can talk to my daddy, but this is my daddy. This is my daddy." And back to that part of the gospel where it says the Father knows the Son knows the Father. No one knows their children better than the parent, and no one knows the parent better than the child. This is the nature of the child that Jesus is saying we need to hold on to, because the gospel is being understood by children. Adults get too closed off. So I want to read a poem that I wrote to you in closing here. This is a poem that I wrote, 50 plus years ago when I was probably 19 or 20 years old. And it's called Kids. Kids are the forest after the rain, fresh and new. A dream of the future, a memory of the past. The beginning of the alphabet, the end of a prayer. Kids are heaven and hell rolled into one. Kids are the reason for living, and the sadness in dying. They are complete and whole and beautiful. Their smile halts Satan's charge. Cursed be the man who harms these gems. Their lives are much more precious than yours or mine will ever be. Kids, keep being yourself. My age doesn't remember how. This is Mark Price. Thanks for listening.